Hi, this is AUNTY FLO, and this is my fourth story on my second book. And the title of this story is The Tiny Skater. This is a fictitious story, also. This story is about a man named Charles McDonald who was um, divorced after 10 years but had no kids. It was a warm summer day in the spring of 2007 when a single 40-year-old man who lived alone in a fairly nice, quiet neighborhood in Irvine, Orange County, California, got up on this Sunday morning, headed to the kitchen to make coffee when he heard a baby crying and it sounded like a newborn. He followed the sound and it led him to his front door where he opened it and there lay a newborn approximately 6 weeks old, all wrapped in a blanket in a basket, and no one else was around. He was so excited he started shaking and didn't know why. He felt like somebody had given him a gift. Then he shook his head and said, "Charles, get a hold of yourself." He picked the basket up and brought it inside, sat it on the kitchen table. He could see that this baby was breathing, and then he thought, okay, the blanket is pink, it must be a girl. He smiled and continued to make himself a cup of coffee. He was thinking, this has to be God giving me a baby. I never had one and so desperately wanted one. But then he thought, nobody will believe this baby is mine because I'm white and the baby is black, but apparently mixed. And to him, this is the most gorgeous, most beautiful baby he has ever seen. He fixed himself a cup of coffee and he kept smiling and staring at the baby and trying to figure out how to go about being able to keep this baby. Finally, later that day, he called the local police non-emergency number, and they came out about a half an hour later, wrote a report, where they were going to call the social worker, and then Charles informed them that he is a licensed social worker in Orange County, and showed them his credential. He asked could he keep the baby overnight and take her into the office the following day. They called their supervisor, and it was approved. Charles thanked them and thought he would pass out from excitement. He called his sister Becky and told her about everything and asked her to come over with her kids and help him figure out what he needed from the store to care for this little one. She was thrilled and came right over. By now the baby was awake. He told Becky that he planned to file paperwork and try and keep the baby. In case the bio parents are not located, of course. They went to the store and they bought diapers, formula, blankets, clothing. He totally fell in love with this baby. Sure enough, first thing on Monday, he took the baby to DCS and completed necessary paperwork and presented it to the sheriff's report, rather. His boss explained they will have to place the baby in temporary custody of a licensed foster care until they located the bio parents. Charles understood that, but filed paperwork with the court to get custody of the baby if no bio parents are located. He became very anxious and checked on the baby every day, which was annoying to the foster parents. Finally, after 60 days, no bio parents were located, so Charles proceeded with the court case and received custody of the baby. He was ecstatic and got together with his sister and decided on a name, which was Candace. He really depended upon his sister for a lot of assistance in decorating his second bedroom as a nursery and also in how to care for a baby of that age. After a couple of nights of being up all night, he decided this was not going well as he had thought. So he decided to hire a nanny. It turns out the agency sent a 36-year-old beautiful nanny named Claire. And guess what? As soon as they met, they had a natural attraction for each other. But they kept it undercover as long as they could. But pretty soon, they both caved, and the three of them were everywhere together. Dinners, movies, lots of places for kids. 2 years later, Charles and Claire were married, and then they realized that all three of their names started with a C. By this time, they also started to notice Candace's personality, and it was apparent that she loved skates and loved to go watch people skate, and also wanted to put on some, even though she wasn't able to move in them. However, by the time she was 4, they bought her a pair of skates for Christmas, and she was so anxious to go outside to skate. Charles held on to her the first few times, but not for long because she was skating like a champ on her own. She also loved watching ice skating on TV. She asked her dad if she could go ice skating, so about a month later, they took her ice skating, and she was spectacular, and the ice skating people told him so. It wasn't long before she was in skating contests, ice skating contests, and winning them. So now they got a manager, and by the time she was 10 years old, she was in the Olympics tryout and won. When she completed the Olympics, she won the USA gold. Everybody was rooting for Candace because most had heard her story either on TV or social media. Every time she would finish her routine, she would bow gracefully and smile. But as soon as she saw her dad, there was a difference in her smile. And she had stars in her eyes when she would see him. And then she would skate as fast as she could to him. And he would pick her up and hug her, and he'd come skate out on the ice a little ways and bow again. The crowd would go absolutely crazy. And this happened every single time that she skated. She turned out to be a very successful young lady. And the lesson learned here, this tiny skater was a diamond in the rough to this 40-year-old man, Charles McDonald. The actual diamond and rough to each other. The end. Bye.